Episode 42, Parenting in Cobra Kai. Peter, what's up, man?
Not much, man. Binging on Netflix, I guess, as the title would likely tell us.
And it's so funny that we were just talking about it this week, and both of us ended up watching the same show. Like, this was not by design just to produce this episode, but hey, let's just go watch Cobra Kai. And I guess both of us fit into the Netflix, audience profile, and that's how we kind of like, hey, yeah, let's try and do Cobra Kai because it's got some very interesting parenting profiles and characters.
Yeah, I mean, and it shouldn't be a surprise because both of us are part of, thousands of people who are watching the same show. Hence, it's trending on Netflix in India. And rightly so. I mean, I think it's tapped into the right profile, the 90s kids. I mean, earlier we were both discussing, right? I mean, when cable television started in India in the 90s, this was one of the movies. Even though it's like, released in 1984, the original Karate Kid, I think every 90s kid has at least once come across this on cable television. And I don't know, I lost track of the number of times I watched Karate Kid, to be honest.
Yeah, and there were so many parts to it also. I remember, like, I think the original Karate Kid had 3 movies, and then it moved to another fourth part, which had a female lead. Then there was a Jackie Chan version also, and now finally Netflix has kind of, taken up the mantle of doing this series. Although it was considered a YouTube original, but then Netflix kind of came in, they took over and all of that. But yeah, this reboot is actually of the first film. When you had your Johnny Lawrence, the big blonde bully, versus this little Italian kid, Daniel LaRusso, and their journey of how they get together in 2 separate karate dojos and then obviously ultimately end up in the finals. And well, we all know what kind of happens in the final. I don't want to give it away, but this series is a continuation of that part 1 because there are so many aspects of that film that are alluded in this series. There are so many parts that they keep going back and forth, and you kind of know what the history was between these 2 men, and that's where the kind of story continues. I think this is 30 odd years later.
Yeah, it actually continues 30 years later. And, one of the things, I guess, about 90s, the movies, right? It was a very classic underdog story. I mean, like, by the end of the movie, you were kind of like, cheering for Daniel to win. And you were like, yeah, every kid. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, in India also, this was the time where karate was the thing, right? Now, did you go for karate classes?
Yeah. I did, and I got so freaked out after a point because we went for this conditioning exercise in another city, and there were these karate champions from various schools, and there I was extremely overwhelmed. And then I saw how they were, the whole conditioning is when you go from your brown belt to your black belt, and you have to take punches, like literally you have to take punches. And I saw that, I freaked out. I came back from that trip and I just started crying in front of my mom, saying, I'm not doing this again. I'm not going at all. My mom said, what happened to you? This is clearly a very traumatic experience. I said, I don't care. I'm not doing this thing again. So yeah.
So basically, this is in a way for you also very relatable, right? The whole karate story.
Yeah. Absolutely. See, as far as I'm the audience, I'm the spectator, I'm not participating, it's fine. But if you're going to throw me in a dojo and ask me to fight, things might just get a little messy.
All right. So, I mean, for this episode, really, we're primarily focusing on, the 2 male characters in there. And like we said earlier, this kind of takes off or continues 30 years after where part 1 of Karate Kid leaves us, right? And it's the final of the karate tournament, the All Valley Championship. The 2 characters, really, just to reintroduce them, right? And kind of come catch up with them. You have, Daniel LaRusso, who won, right? He now 30 years later is the owner of a successful auto business. He's happily married, has 2 kids, a boy and a girl. And if you think about it, he's now like kind of have it all, right? I mean, he's got the good life and everything else. But that's how it looks on the outside, right? As the episodes go on, you kind of uncover various different things, and you think
it's not as shiny as all the chrome.
Yeah. And the thing is, you think that at this point karate is far from his life, and as the episodes go on, you see how it kind of takes over, and he's still that 14-15-year-old kid who is still in that fight. So he hasn't really come a lot. He hasn't come far away from that, right?
Absolutely. So you have Daniel LaRusso who goes from humble beginning, simple life to this absolutely affluent adulthood, parent, kids, a huge mansion, all of that, right? But on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Johnny Lawrence, who came from a very rich background. And then over the years, it just started dwindling. And in the beginning of the show, you see him in this rented apartment, completely like worn out. You couldn't imagine that somebody like him would be staying there. So he was married. Wife and son left him, so he's living alone. The wife has the custody of the son. Clearly very estranged relationship. He doesn't get to meet his son, and at a point, there's a point where you realize that okay, maybe he's not even interested in the kid. He doesn't really care. He's doing what he wants to. He's this kind of a handyman. He comes across as a screw up. Clearly seems that he can't even hold a single job. So basically his life is a complete mess. So you see, if this was a graph, right, you'll see Danny LaRusso like going up, a nice slant, and then you see Lawrence just going down and just deeper and deeper and deeper, almost touching the ground. So yeah, these are the two main characters, and both of them are parents, both of them have kids, and that's where the story starts off.
Yeah, and one of the things I noticed about in Cobra Kai, right? One of the themes that continues from Karate Kid is the aspect of single parenting, right? If you remember, in Karate Kid, Daniel was brought up by his mother, so a single parent. Right. And the character here in Cobra Kai is a similar story with the character Miguel, who's again kind of brought up by his mother. Very similar thing. So in a way, when you're watching it, you kind of see parallels between the characters of Daniel in Karate Kid and Miguel in Cobra Kai. But here, what also happens...
Absolutely.
But here what also happens is, like you mentioned, you have Johnny's kid, Robbie Keane, who's being brought up by his mother, who's, as a parent, you see barely around. So there's not really much involvement she has with her own son. So that kind of thing continues from Karate Kid on over into Cobra Kai.
No, it's interesting that, the single parenting is such a popular theme in these kind of shows, because it sort of highlights what kind of society we are living in, and everyone wants to rise up, become better, do something well, and that's exactly, I think, what the story is. The interesting thing is, you have someone like a Johnny Lawrence who's a bully. He's extremely patriarchal. I think you can say that, because it's all about being a man and going out with babes and dating and all of that, right? That's his character. And then you have his neighbor Miguel with his sweet single mother and his grandmother, and you just kind of don't see them mix, but it eventually happens. They kind of mix together because of their background. I think Johnny connects with Miguel also because that's a very similar sort of life that he also led because of his mother, and Johnny lived with his stepfather, and Johnny used to get bullied all the time by his stepfather, and which was kind of weird. And in this case, Miguel doesn't have a father, so I see some connection. And obviously, it takes a fight for him to realize that, okay, I need to help this kid out, but he doesn't give a damn about anyone. He just wants to be alone. He just wants to be himself. So the whole aspect of him being a father but not having that a child to kind of raise, and then he sees some kind of potential in Miguel, but he uses that little kid and in terms of karate. So I mean, I get it, but it's not the right approach to raise anyone's kid, you know.
No, I mean, the way I look at it is it's the same parallel they're using as how it was in Karate Kid, right? I mean, like I said, Miguel plays the character or a similar character to what Daniel played in Karate Kid. So in the initial episodes, you see, so where now in a role reversal of sorts, with the role that Miyagi played, taking Daniel under his wing, here you have Johnny Lawrence taking Miguel under his wing. And again, both movies, if you look at it, Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, you have that, because of the absent fathers in there, right? You have the karate coaches playing like a very important role as father figures, where, like I said, Mr. Miyagi played a very important role in Daniel's upbringing, Daniel LaRusso. So that continues in there, and you keep seeing that as a recurring throwback in Cobra Kai. Again, John Kreese plays the father figure to Johnny Lawrence, as we discover in Cobra Kai. And now here in Cobra Kai, you've got Johnny Lawrence playing the father figure to Miguel through karate, and Daniel playing the father figure to Robbie Keane, who's Johnny's son, which is kind of like a Bollywoodish twist if you think about it, right?
Yeah, it might sound very complicated right now on Pops in a Pod, but trust me, it's very simple when you put the faces to the names, and once you get involved, right, you kind of see the journey. It's like, this is interesting, and it's so like masala, right? You just want to watch it. You know what's gonna happen, but you just want to watch it. And this show is definitely about fathers, right? Like you rightly said, if it's not directly about a biological father, then somewhere down the line you have another male figure who takes up that mantle. In this case, your coaches, right? Miyagi lost his family in the war, so he takes Daniel LaRusso in part 1, and Kreese kind of comes as a father figure for Johnny Lawrence, because Johnny Lawrence's stepfather was a bully, and he, whatever, I think at some point hated his kid or whatever it is. And in this case, it's the exact same thing. They're both fathers, right? They're both fathers first, but the role of the coach is much higher, I feel, and that is your story, right? How they take these two very distinct children. Forget the fact that Robbie is Johnny Lawrence's son, right? It's just that you have these two male figures who take these two young boys and they just kind of mold them basis their philosophy, which is Johnny Lawrence talks about how it is to be a man, to strike first, to strike hard, no mercy, no, we don't believe in defeat, Cobra Kai never die. I like that. That's his philosophy, like very aggressive, very aggro, very macho, right? And then on the other hand, you've got LaRusso who talks about balance and, whatever, very smooth and fluid and water and blah and whatever, right? But ultimately, they want to fight.
Yeah, I mean, see, one of the things is what happens here, I feel, is in addition to just not only teaching them the sport, right, of karate, is the life lessons that they're learning. I mean, you see that relationship develop between Johnny Lawrence and Miguel. One of the instances, at least I remember very distinctly, is when Miguel is going out on the date, right? And he's talking to Johnny Lawrence about it, and Johnny Lawrence tells him where to go and things like that. And that's the kind of stuff that normally you would do with your own kid, right? But here he's doing it with someone else who's not his kid. Similarly with, Daniel LaRusso, when he's kind of talking to Robbie Keane while they're training and talking to him about balance in life and how you need to maintain that balance in order. So like it's these life lessons that they are passing on to
in their own distinct style.
Yeah. So that's also kind of is molding them and kind of shaping them in there. So that was kind of quite interesting to see that dynamic in there.
No, I definitely see them as parents first. Like for the show, it's all about the coach, the fight, karate, so on and so forth, right? But now that I'm also a parent, I see certain things, right? And either I'm judging or I'm agreeing or I'm disagreeing, right? For me, it was very distinct when I was looking at these characters. Like I was cringing at the way Johnny Lawrence was, treating Miguel, and I'd be like, what is this random like toxic masculinity and trying to enforce that onto a kid who has been raised by two women? Like that's stupid. That's wrong. Like clearly he's got a very good upbringing by these two ladies in his life, and then suddenly Johnny Lawrence comes in, like saying, hey, forget all of that, this is how you need to be tough, you need to be hard. And sadly that's who Miguel became, right? Like that was his journey. And I found that really like, come on, man, not in today's day and age. You can't do this. Like it's weird. Like what happened to equality, and like what are these parenting skills? I don't know. For me that was a bit off.
So yeah, I mean it's the same thing with Daniel LaRusso, right? Like we talked in the start, where you see that he has it all, right? I mean he's living the good American life, if I must say. You have the big house, kids. Yeah. You have the country club membership. So he's clearly made it. But then as the episodes kind of progress, you see cracks in his relationship, right? I mean, his relationship with his daughter, his son, how they have disagreements, then how it impacts his relationship with his wife also, right? And you clearly see that as it becomes very evident as the episodes go on and also in the seasons go on. Which brings me again to the fact of their upbringing, right? I mean, you clearly now see in this aspect, because of Cobra Kai, the focus is on Johnny Lawrence. You get the backstory of Johnny and how he grew up in a rich household where his father was a bully to him, right? And that kind of shaped his character, becoming a bully. He had John Kreese take him under his wing, and he kind of shaped his philosophy or the way he was. After him, and the tournament, how that kind of created such a rift in his life. So that kind of had an impact in there. And, as the season goes on, then you kind of realize that that's been one of those few defining things that, as a result, that's what he's become as a parent. And that becomes one of those very important things. Like you said, right? I mean, you always wonder as the episodes go on, is that why the hell is he not concerned about his own kid, right? This is his own kid.
True.
What's going on? Why is he not worried?
Yeah.
And as the episodes go on, you kind of figure that out.
No, what I noticed was, Peter, was that it is so easy to mold somebody at a very young age. I mean, I'm stating the obvious, but now you see it in this film as well, right? That when you catch somebody young, it is so easy to instill your thoughts, your philosophy, your ideas of life, and you kind of see them as the miniature replicas of, in this case, both the coaches. Robbie clearly, had very suspect friends, and he was into petty theft and so on and so forth. But then you see his journey, right? How he became under LaRusso. Miguel, on the other hand, bit of a well, I wouldn't like to use the word sissy, but he didn't like to. He was not very confrontational. He didn't like to, fight or anything. He was a nice, sweet kid. You could probably call him a nerd as well because he hung out with a couple of nerds. But then he became aggressive. He became tough, right? I think tough is a right word. He didn't bully people or anything, because there was a great balance of the two philosophies that makes Miguel, his mom and grandmom, and a little bit of Johnny Lawrence's influence. So what this show really showed me was that when you have the right mentor, correct? And that mentor could be anyone. It could be a coach. It could be a parent. It could be anything. And if you really believe in that, I think you can really shape your future, and you can see where you're sort of headed. Which is why I wanted to ask you this next question. LaRusso has a 16-year-old daughter. They clearly had something in common, which was karate, but at some point it kind of fell out. Do you think LaRusso should have tried harder to get his daughter back into the fold, instead of going after Robbie because he saw some potential or whatever?
I don't know. I mean, the way I see that relationship is that honestly, LaRusso got manipulated into it, because it wasn't him reaching out to Robbie, right? It was the other way around.
Yeah.
And he had that void where he wanted somebody to take under his wing. And clearly, with Cobra Kai coming back, he felt that void of karate, right? Where he was kind of missing that in a way, and it kept eating at him, right? So so that's where I feel that he was kind of ready for whoever was going to come under his wing, whether it was his daughter,
and also
son.
with the whole Cobra Kai suddenly showing up in his town, and he feeling a little threatened and whatnot. So I guess that would work. But knowing his background, like, okay, let's start with LaRusso's background. Okay, single kid, single parent. His mom Miyagi shows him a great philosophy of karate and self-defense and blah and blah, and then sort of grows up to become this man. And now he wants to instill those ideas into his own children, but he can't, because his son comes across as an absolute brat who's constantly playing on devices. He's eating the worst junk food whatsoever. And you would imagine, right? You would imagine that LaRusso would have tried to bring them, at least bring up his son in a way, and try and instill this whole karate Miyagi dojo philosophy in his son. That clearly didn't work out. And then his daughter was also around, but then obviously high school happened, and then she kind of sort of moves on and goes with the it crowd. Somewhere I feel, I guess work took over, and then family just, whatever happened. Obviously things do change later on in the series, but I like that. I like that shift, that he tries, but he should just probably try harder. I don't know. As a parent, I always feel you can't just give up and give in and say, okay, fine, they'll figure out life for themselves. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think, as we talked in the start, right? While both of them have very contrasting characters, right? Johnny Lawrence and Daniel LaRusso. But what they have in common is the struggle of parenting, right? I mean, bringing up teenagers is clearly evident in this, and especially going to high school and things like that is a bit of a I mean, it is a bit of a struggle. So that's where they have that commonality, in addition to karate, right? And I feel that's where, in a way, while we say that Johnny Lawrence kind of gave up on his kid, similarly you have Daniel LaRusso kind of giving up on his kids in that aspect. Like, even though they live in the same house and everything else, but you still see a gap between them, right?
Exactly, and that's such a great point, that even though you are under the same roof, there is this massive distance between parent and child. And on the flip side, you have Lawrence and Robbie, who are like apart from each other, like physically they're apart from each other, and that's one common thing between them. So great coaches, great proteges or apprentice. But as parents, there are many suspect things that they do. But hey, you know what? I guess everyone has their own flaws. So I guess it's all cool. But what I definitely want to talk about next is the whole work life balance between both of them, Lawrence as well as LaRusso. So LaRusso clearly, again, this is what I feel, that he still hasn't got over the feud with Lawrence, even though he beat him, right? In the film, he beat him. Like it's so obvious. The film the series starts with that aspect, but then suddenly when Cobra Kai shows up, something happens to LaRusso and everything just goes off. Like you see the wife also, right? LaRusso's wife, who's the CEO of the auto dealership that he started. Clearly, they work together in the marriage as well as work. She also can see that suddenly out of nowhere this has affected him, and now he wants to start his own dojo, and he's just moving further and further away from home, family, kids, work also, and he's just spending too much time in this quote unquote passion project of his. And you see things kind of falling apart. Like where do you see that he should have kind of drawn the line? It's like, okay, enough, man, just like it's all right, like forget about it.
I mean, see, that's where there's the conflict, right, in the characters, I feel, is that
Right.
While at the surface you think that, and at the end of the first part, you see him emerging as the winner. But when you reflect on it right now, did he really win, right? For him, it was just that actual tournament that he won. But in life, did he really move far ahead? And sometimes, of course, there are certain parts of the series where you see them bonding over things, right? Like over the girl and things
correct.
like that.
Right.
But there's always something or the other which, misunderstandings or that one-upmanship that they keep having with each other, which in a way could have been positive, but they just take it for the other end, and it keeps getting more and more toxic, right?
Yeah, exactly. And coming to toxic, you've got Johnny Lawrence. Like we've spoken about him and his background. Like there is no balance. He's just tilted to one end, which is Cobra Kai. There's nothing else. He doesn't bother, connecting with his son. Like his ex-coach John Kreese has to come and keep telling him that, dude, your son is training under your arch enemy, and you are okay with that. And that kind of stirs something. It's like, oh yeah, maybe I should go get my son back, But what happened to the last 15-16 years? Like, even when the principal calls and says, hey, is Robbie yours, or rather, are you Robbie's father? And it's like, yeah, I'm Robbie's father. Now what does he do? Like, very reluctant. Like, it's like, hey, why did I answer this phone call? I should have just kind of stayed away. But then that boy is troubled. His father clearly was never there, absent father. The mother is trying to hook up with rich men so that she can get her life on track, because there's no work that she's happening, and this boy just left rudderless. There's no guiding force at all for him. So Johnny clearly doesn't believe in work-life balance, because he has no life. It's just like work, and work is Cobra Kai, and he's trying to get students and whatever, push his philosophy out there. And yeah, as a parent, not the most ideal parent out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, right, if you see, for him, there was that complete void in his life, and that's what they kind of show him at the start of the series, right? And his purpose comes in with Cobra Kai, right? Because he's realized that's what is really the only thing that he was good at. And that's how they slowly it keeps going further and further in there.
Yeah.
I mean, even one of the defining moments for me is like, his stepfather keeps giving him money, and finally he uses that last settlement money kind of thing to open Cobra Kai dojo, and he makes so much money as they get successful that he actually goes and returns that money back to his father.
The money.
Right? So that kind of thing kind of comes to some sort of closure with his father in that respect. But yeah, I mean, there is no balance of sorts. It's just about him filling whatever void in his life with Cobra Kai, and that's his only purpose.
There's one thing that I really took away from the series is that you can find the purpose of your life at any age, right? He must be what? Both the characters must be 40 plus, I'm sure, in the series, right? But both of them found a certain purpose, the void that you were talking about, that it had to be filled with something. And I think karate sort of came back in their lives, and more for Lawrence because he had nothing, right? He has nothing at all, and then he finds himself back on his feet, and he's doing something for the society in his own weird toxic masculine way, but he's a nice guy. Like he clearly likes to do things his own way, and he's a sweet guy. And LaRusso, obviously, passion project, dojo, philosophy of self-defense, or whatever it is. So I think both of them find their own little purpose way into their into their married and parenting lives, which is, I think, I find that very interesting, and that's something positive that I definitely take away from the series.
Now that it's midlife crisis.
But clearly the word crisis hasn't really come up in that way, the way it should probably come to us. I hope it doesn't, but yeah.
Doesn't LaRusso's wife actually say that to him at one point, right? Like, is this your midlife crisis? And I was like,
yeah, I think she does.
I was like, so it clearly looks like that, right?
True. But let's leave with one question, right? I'm going to ask you this. Is this series meant for teenagers?
I don't know, man. So the thing is, right, and this is my personal opinion, is that when I watched it, I was like, oh, cool. This is like Karate Kid, right? And Karate Kid was, how do I say, G-rated, right? Anyone could watch it and could relate to it. But this series, Cobra Kai, is a bit dark. I mean, the way the characters go and stuff like that, it just leaves you a little uncomfortable of sorts. And for me, that's the main reason I would say, it's not really for teenagers, because, I mean, see, unfortunately in India, we have this whole thing of the West, right? That, this is cool and things like that. And, they show aspects of, underage drinking and things like that, which I think may not be like the best references or best thing that you would want your teenager to be watching, right?
No, absolutely. Because this series, when I looked at it, so the first season that I watched clearly, brought back a lot of memories of Karate Kid, and the series also made sure that we revisited that film, because there were so many flashbacks that they kept showing. And you're right, like Karate Kid, the movie, was a fun show. A typical David versus Goliath. David's going to win, but how is he going to win? Yeah, that's the beauty. But I also see a much deeper layer of the series, which in this case obviously is parenthood, and that's not the most ideal series I would like to watch it with my teen. If I had a teen, it's not something I'd be very comfortable watching, no matter how cool I am as a parent, as a dad. I'll be like, no, there are certain things that is just not that can't be encouraged. So yeah, even I feel that this was not meant for your 14 plus. Apparently that's what Netflix rating is, 14 plus, age 14 and above. And that's clearly not the case, because there are expletives used, a lot of sexual innuendos, some pretty racy stuff also in bits and pieces, a lot of alcoholism, which is so weird, right? You brought up the whole underage drinking. So yeah, for me that's a no in terms of getting your teens to watch. But I think all in all, fun series, highly predictable, but fun nonetheless.
I would say this is like something that you could make your kids watch and say, this is not how you should be as a parent. It should be that probably is what it could be used as.
or actually our kids should turn around and say, hey man, that's not the kind of dad you should be right now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, actually, the thing I enjoyed the most was also, I must give credit to the soundtrack of the entire series. It was kind of nice to revisit a lot of the 80s and 90s rock music, and even that aspect.
I was waiting for you to bring this up. I was waiting for you. I was waiting that when will Peter talk about the music? I did not hint it. I was like, no, I'm sure he's going to talk. I'm sure it's there somewhere, and there we go. It's the music.
Like even the part where what school is like. I talked about the impact they're having as father figures, right? I mean, when you hear Miguel's ringtone and Johnny Lawrence tells him, it's like, what's that music? Like, check out Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, Guns N' Roses. And like the next time his phone rings, there's a song by Rat playing on it, and he's like, oh wow, you actually like it. And like that whole thing that develops between them very shortly is kind of cool, right? I mean, it also brings back to memory, like, all the old music, and it's very well programmed, all the music throughout the series.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I also like that there are a lot of female roles in the film that have been set nicely. Like, it's not your typical female roles, homemaker, mother, and then daughter who's, this really hot looking daughter, and she's in the wrong crowd and some guy comes and saves her. And not that, it's like well defined. Even like women can fight, even girls can fight, and even they can train and hold their own, and they're like really nice. I like that aspect as well, really well.
I think that way the Karate Kid franchise has kind of got upgraded, right? Where it's at least this part they kept up with the post millennial thing, right?
Yeah, it's like anyone can fight. Hey man, karate is good for everyone. It's not a boy thing, like anyone can do it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, if you guys haven't watched it yet, you can watch it on Netflix. It's trending. I think it's there in the top 10 easily. And it's a fun watch. I wouldn't recommend watching it with your underage kids, 18 and plus. Yeah, I guess go for it. But it's fun. I think it's totally binge worthy. I finished it in some 3 days or something.
Wait, seriously, 3 days? I think I've been rationing it out a couple of episodes at the most every other day. So yeah, that's why I've just managed to finish it.
So yeah, in case if you guys have any recommendations that you would like us to watch, series, movie, Indian, international, whatever it is, drop us a mail on popsinapod@gmail.com.
Or you can reach out to us on social media. Just search for Pops in a Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and like, share, subscribe, as they say.
Also, please follow us and subscribe to our podcast on any podcasting platform that you listen to your podcast. The next time we put up a new episode, you should definitely hear it.
Yeah, so until next time, here's Peter Pop.
And this is another Pop. See you guys soon.
See you.